We're about 1 minute away from 7:30, but we are live streaming now. For
Okay.
those that have joined us, super excited.
Okay.
All right, everything is sent over. And everyone, it is 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. Welcome to another edition of Real Talk, produced by Let's Talk America with host Shana Thornton, a radio podcast. I am Shana, of course. I'm on air, host and your executive producer. And tonight, we have a special treat for you. You know, usually we come in on the weekends, but so excited on this Wednesday night. It's a cold Wednesday night, exactly on the East Coast. But having a friend of this show, it's been several years, but we are so elated with joy and honored to have the one and only, give us a virtual clap, for award-winning international poet Hank Stewart.
Thank you,
Hank,
Shana. Thank you. Thank you for having me back. I must not have done too good the last time because it took you what, 12 years to invite me back?
But we're back. We're not going to talk about that.
I must have been pretty bad.
Yeah, no, you were amazing, and seeing you out in the international news, Hank, has been such a joy to watch. I'm gonna. So many people know your name; they know what you have already accomplished, achieved. You've been with individuals on the international scene, the national scene. So much of it. Hank Stewart is an award-winning poet. He's based in Atlanta, but he travels the world, sharing his gift of creativity with people, and really just sharing creativity about so many topics and issues out there. Hank, we have a tradition here on Real Talk where we ask our guests, instead of plastering your resume, and yours is quite impressive, I must say, but instead of plastering that, we give you, the guests, exclusive guests, the opportunity for the next 2 minutes to really give us the behind the scenes of, you know, Hank is an award winning, you've done so much, you've been with presidents of the United States and prime ministers, but why poetry? Why has it brought you to this point? And what have you personally gained from it? Take it away, my friend.
So again, thank you for trusting me to entertain your mic tonight. Poetry, I didn't choose poetry. Poetry chose me. I always say, and Mark Twain said, the two greatest days of your life are the days that you're born and the day that you realize why you were born. I think there are three great days, Shana. The day that you're born, the day that you're born again, and the day that you realize why you were born again. And so November the 7th, 1991 was the day that I discovered my purpose. My born day is September. My birthday is September the 4th, 1963, but my purpose day is November the 7th, 1991. And that was a day that everything evolved. I went from a manager to UPS to understanding my purpose in life. And so I have not looked back. Thank God, so many people are, they say born in transition who never discovered their purpose. And so to have discovered my purpose, I thought it was late, but considering that some people never discover their purpose, it was right on time. And I was around 27, 28 years of age when I discovered I was a poet.
Wow. I love that. So you were fairly young, but you had another career, right? I mean, I've got to ask this though. You're so gifted at what you do, writing, and also of speaking and I don't want to say performing, but spoken word, because you really mesmerize audiences. I've seen that up close and personal myself, seeing it and witnessing people experiencing you and your gift. But as a child, Did you? I know you're saying when it birthed and it came out in the 90s, but as a child, did you find yourself loving literature? Did you find yourself loving poems,
No,
or
no,
no?
that was not my choice. My If I could have chosen a career as a child, or even in school, it was I ended up going to school for computer science.
Nice.
But I wanted to be an architect, but I had nothing. Matter of fact, and I always tell the story. Poetry was so far off my radar blip that that was nothing that I even entertained. If you put all the talents that a man and a woman could have on a table, probably one of the last things I would have probably chosen would have been poetry. As a matter of fact, if there was only two things left between me and you, I said, can we can we change? Can we exchange? Because poetry was not it. But I'm so glad that I discovered that, and I'm so glad that it was what God put me on this earth to do.
Beautiful.
And really, for me, one of the things that was really, really powerful, once I started to write poetry and fell in love with words, truly understood the power of words, I started to do research. And so people like Nikki Giovanni, Sonia Sanchez, Maya Angelou, Langston Hughes, Paul Laurence Dunbar, what moved me in the social conscious arena was that I saw all of them. They were very conscious about their work. They were very engaged in the civil rights movement, or the human rights movement. And so that moved me in that direction. Growing up, having some amazing parents, grandparents, family. My family is very active in the community. And so it wasn't a question of, being involved, but sitting under the leadership of Reverend Cameron Madison Alexander at Antioch Baptist Church North, and then developing, some amazing mentors like Dr. Joseph Eccles Lyre, Ms. Anola Clayton, Dr. C.T. Vivian, Tommy Dortch, James Orange, Cleo Orange, so many people who poured into me. Poetry became what it became purpose for me. And so, again, Miles Monroe said the greatest tragedy in life is not death, but the greatest tragedy in life is to be given life and not know why you're living. On that day, November the 7th, I discovered my purpose, and the whole world opened up to me after that.
Wow. I mean, when you say the whole world, that had to be life changing, right? I
It
mean, because
was.
here you go to college for IT, you're
Mhm.
working a career, you're right, I'm sure you're taking care of life, doing things, and then this hits you. It almost seems to a lot of ways, and you're saying you didn't grow up doing poetry contests, you weren't necessarily that kid who
Mhm.
was the strong writer, because I think we all know, we're like, oh, they're creative, they're good at what
Mhm.
they do. You're
Mhm.
saying your story wasn't written like that.
That was not my story. And again, I was already settled into a career. I was a manager at UPS, Shana. And so I'm making really good money. I'm
Yes,
making more money than my mom and my dad put
yes,
together, right? And so you talking about, at the time I was married, you're talking about leaving a great job, benefits and stock options and all that to go and do what? A lot of my friends thought I was crazy,
yeah,
and I often tell now, of course, UPS managers made great money a lot back in the day in the mid '80s. They had these stock options, and I was
yes,
a two-tier manager, so my options were coming pretty great. One of my best friends and mentor today was my manager at UPS, and he's still one of my mentors, George Brooks, and he tried to talk me out of leaving. And I often tell a lot of my friends, I say a lot of them have more money than I have, but I'm richer. The
yes,
experiences that I've had in life, and really being able to hone in on why God put me on this earth, and to be able to document things through poetry. I had an opportunity to perform from Michelle Obama to Rosa Parks, first poet to grace the main stage at the Essence Festival. Thank you to Cicely Ingram and Ingrid Saunders Jones and the Coca-Cola Foundation. Had an opportunity to do McDonald's commercials that were national, had to help change the brand back in the day, 365
beautiful.
Black, so poetry commercials run. Had an opportunity to perform on the Trumpet Awards, Ms. Lenona
Nice.
Clayton. So I've had some unique opportunities that, Kendra Norma Bellamy, who's one of our Essence bestseller authors, she and I co-authored 2 books, and they were bestsellers. So, I mean, when I look back, I'm so glad I made that decision, because what I've been able to, what God has been able to do through me, and
That's
what
right.
I've been able to, it's been priceless.
I can't help but think of this when I think of you telling your story, Hank. And again, you're watching live stream in real time, the award-winning Let's Talk America with host Shana Thornton radio podcast. We're on this Wednesday cold night on the East Coast with the one and only international award-winning poet Hank Stewart is on with us. He's talking about the impact of poetry on his life, creativity, and also something I did not know, interviewed you over a decade ago, not realizing that this was something that was not necessarily planned out strategically, something, a real gift that you certainly believe, and I believe came from God for you to share with others in the world. But for someone watching you right now, say she's a 35-year-old working somewhere in a warehouse, or maybe she's a 36-year-old RN and saying they want to change careers, Hank. But life hits, right? As they say, as adults, we're lifing. What would be your advice for someone who, say, maybe they see whatever gift that is? Maybe that's, I don't know, being an entertainment promoter. Maybe it's being a vocalist, a violinist, something they love. But the fear is keeping them back because, there's so many obligations that come with it. But I will also say this ahead of time before your answer. We have one life. We're on borrowed time. But what would be your advice to those individuals?
Well, I think you have to do your due diligence on your movement, on your transition. I discovered that I was a poet November the 7th, 1991. I didn't leave UPS until July of 1995. So it was 4 years later that I transitioned.
Okay.
And when I discovered my purpose, I started, and I knew it was the latter part of that 91, 92. When I knew that that's what God had for me, I started transitioning, right? So I started paying off things, making sure you get that debt down, and you start building up your savings. And I was out doing poetry recitals on the weekends, and so I let my job, my purpose, push me out of my job.
Yeah,
I just said something that's pretty powerful.
Wow.
I let my purpose push me out of my job. Because what happened was the demands of and people request of me asking to come in and do poetry and speak it started conflicting with my job, and I started getting, I was making money, great money for quick hits, but it was not what I was making at UPS. So what I had to do was I created books. Poetry books. And so when I was out, I had another source of income, another on top of the honorariums. Now you could sell these books. And back in the day, and then I had, we had cassette tapes, and people wanted to hear my voice recite the poems, right? So they didn't want to read the poems, they wanted to hear me, which was a good thing. So I recorded, cassettes, and then went on to CDs and things of that nature. But I would find myself selling, 100 books on a Sunday at somebody's church, right, at $10. So you made $1,000 back in 1991. 4 weeks, and you do a different church every Sunday. Now that's $4,000. You're moving yourself out, and so I started doing my due diligence. So I would encourage anybody, definitely don't sit on your purpose. Just find out how to make it make sense to you and make, and generate revenue. And so you can, because, Hosea Williams used to say, I'm out here feeding the homeless, but I don't want to become one of them. You want to make sure that you can, provide for your family and things.
That's true.
But there's ways to do that, and put things in place that allow you to do that. So I've been really, really fortunate. I can't get Reverend Cameron Madison Alexander enough credit, because when I came to him, my pastor, and told him that I was going to start writing poetry, he created a platform at church. And my church, is a very powerful church. It had a lot of amazing people sitting in the. So when I recited poetry, you had the president of a college there, you had a bank president, you had, executives and things like that. And most of the things that I bragged about that I've done, they were members of Antioch. When I won the Emmy and Promax and Gabby Award for Fox 5, some commercials.
Yes.
It was a member of my church who was right there, who saw me and said, let's do this. So the church, my church provided a lot of resources. And Reverend Alexander, I often say, he didn't abort my dream, he fertilized him. He didn't, he didn't kill him. Sometimes you have people around you who are dream killers, right? They're like, oh no, you can't do that. You can't make no money out there. He said, well, let's see what we can do. And he created a platform, and Antioch was one of my first venues that I ever spoke at.
I love that. And I love that, so many times I think we have these blueprints for our platforms, Hank, and you're saying start with what you know as well, right? That have your village, if you will. You said your pastor already, you shared your vision, and he was supportive, because I think so many times we look at these grandeur ideas that float on social media where you've got to connect with a Hank Stewart immediately. You've got to connect with an Oprah immediately. And obviously there's a lot of reverence and respect for your pastor, but you're saying if you're already in a village, you're already in a network, I guess you're saying really just share your vision with those that are around you that already love and support you.
Yeah, and you have to be careful even who you share that with sometimes, because again, you have dream killers. But if you're a part of sororities or fraternities, allowed if you're part of civic organizations, the 100 Black Men, 100 Black Women, and that I did all of that. The Concerned Black Clergy was really, really powerful back in the 90s, and I would go to the meetings, and whenever they had a program, I would volunteer. It wasn't about the honorarium; it was about the exposure. So I volunteered, Reverend Dr. Gerald Durley, Reverend Tim McDonald. It was people like that who put me on platforms, right? So now you got all these churches. So when I was calling these pastors to come and be a part of their men's day, their women's day, their youth day, their pastor's appreciation, they knew me. They were comfortable with me, and some provided honorariums. And a lot of time I would say, if you can't pay me, just please allow me to sell books in the vestibule of your church, right? And I'm going to tithe 10% of what I get from your church back to your church, right? I'm going to tithe before I leave. We'll count this money up, and I give my 10% back. And so that was always appealing and attractive to the church. And they saw my poetry was not pieces that that degraded women or had profanity and all of that. So it was something that that was positive and that would add to somebody's church service, right? And so for me, I was really, really fortunate. I mean, like I said, I was really it was a whole lot of people, Shana, who really said my name when I was not in the room.
Beautiful.
That's where my success comes from. It's not about me and how good I was. It was the people in the room who said Hank should be on this program. It was the Tommy Dorches, it was the James Oranges, it's the Helen Butlers, it's the it was the Janice Mathis, people who it was the Joe Beasleys, who said Hank Stewart should be on this program, and they had enough juice in the room that the room accepted me being on that program. And what was happening was my resume was being built at that very moment. So now you're in the room performing, but you got all these civil and human rights legends, Representative Congressman John Lewis, and you got, you got the mayors, and you got people from other cities, states, and countries in the room, and so all of that proved to be very beneficial. I cannot say enough for the people who said my name when I was not in the room, because it could have gone the other direction too, Shana. It could have been somebody could have said my name and they'd be like, no, not him, right? They could have said the no, and then they could have killed it, But to have people who validate you in the room. I mean, God puts us in the room, but to have people who also validated your asset to a program was really important to us.
I've got to ask you some questions, and we love it. Thank you so much. So many people are on giving their feedback. Before we dive right into our first comment and question, the no. I've got to ask this because you're so successful, you're so renowned, and maybe someone out there saying, "Well, I wanna step out on a limb and play the saxophone. I want to be a Miles Davis in my own right as a trumpet player," but they're afraid of the no. And you've had a lot of yeses thrown your way, Hank. But have you ever had no's? And if you have,
I haven't had a no. What I had was not now.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Okay. So if it might have sounded like no, but to me it was not now. Or maybe I wasn't ready for it. I didn't want anything that God didn't give me.
Okay.
You know what I mean? If he gave it to me, it was no no's in the room, right? Because God gave it to you. So but I would encourage, the people that are listening and the people that are sending messages, get mentors. I've had phenomenal mentors, and mentors would help you in a lot of different ways. You get to bounce off things. That's similar to what a parent does for their children. We want most parents, and I won't say all, but most parents want their children to do better than them. Mentors want to see the same thing. They want to see you succeed, right? They want to see you win. Good mentors, and they put you in the position to win. So I would really challenge anybody who's on the stream listening right now, find you somebody who want to see you win. Find you a great mentor, right? People who you can call. And I've had a bunch. I didn't just have one. I
Yeah.
mean, like you heard some of these names, and
Yeah.
I was really fortunate, to have a Joseph Eccles Lowry, right? And most of the guys, the CT Vivian, the ambassador Andrew Young was not a mentor, but he's poured into my life, right,
Okay.
with knowledge and things of that nature. And I can say he was a mentor, but to have him and then to have people like Ms. Alona Clayton that you can sit at her feet and talk to her about, because to me that's what we're doing with poetry. We're documenting yesterday and trying to regurgitate it so it makes sense for today and tomorrow, right?
Love it.
And so that's what they did for me. I would to be able to walk into their offices and their homes and talk to them, and they pour in, they impart wisdom and knowledge and all of that that history into you. You can't lose with that. You
Yeah.
can't lose.
I
Now
love
it's a heavy burden. It's a heavy burden because you have to make sure that they didn't invest in the wrong person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Do your part as well as we ask for
Exactly
support.
right.
I
Exactly right.
love it. We are listening and you're listening and witnessing and a wonderful experience. We're talking with international award-winning poet Hank Stewart. He's out of Atlanta Metro. So excited to be on this Wednesday night live stream with him. Get your questions in. You're watching Let's Talk America with host Shana Thornton. Of course, I'm Shana, on air host and your executive producer. First up, Sadiqa out of Atlanta says, it's nothing like a man who's creative with his words. That's a compliment to the one and only Mr. Stewart. She said you named all of her favorite poets. She loves it. We've got an awesome thumbs up. Stacy out of Atlanta says, hello. Cassandra out of Atlanta Metro says, I love the fact that Hank said he was paying down bills and prepared for his purpose. Hank, that's a compliment to you. I think so many times we believe this sort of wild farce that, hey, I gave everything up and I just went marching on the road to San Diego. And Cassandra is really complimenting you and supporting the fact that you're saying keep a balance. And one of the first things you said to me at the top of this segment, you say still be responsible and take care of your family and pay bills down. I love that. So you're saying,
and the other thing, and now here's what we want to do with young people. We want to help young people not to get in that personal debt early on.
okay,
The earlier you discover your purpose. So now if you got young people who are discovering their purpose at 16, they don't have the debt, then how to stay out of that debt and still transition into your purpose. So, I had to do it a little the backwards way, but I was able to do it. And she's absolutely right. And so I saved money. I remember moving to Atlanta back in 1984. I wanted to come here. My brother was going to school here. And that's a whole nother broadcast. That was so when you can't tell me there's not a God, because so many things, when you look at the things that lined up for me to be here and on this program with you tonight, had nothing to do with Hank Stewart. But so even moving here, I saved. I was constantly saving money. I think I still got my third grade lunch money. I saved money. I'm gonna save some money. I don't believe in spending. My dad used to say, if I give you a quarter, save a nickel. If I give you a dime, save 2 pennies. If I give you a nickel, save. Learn how to save some money. Don't always go and run and spend everything you have. My granddad used to say that money burn in your pocket. And so I learned how to save and be frugal in what I'm doing. And I think that for me has been the benefit.
I love it. I love it. Great advice. We are talking life lessons here with Hank Stewart. If you're watching us live, get your questions in. If you've ever won an award-winning creative spirit, a creative poet who is world-renowned in front of you, want to ask him something, here is your chance. You're on Let's Talk America Podcast Radio. Stacy out of Atlanta says, Hank, do you have any open poetry nights in a local metro Atlanta area? Take it away.
Well, tell Stacy now on the same page. We're just vibing. So I don't have any open mics. We're getting back to something that I started called Love Jones Sundays. And so we're going to get back to that. But on next Saturday, the 14th, and I think you might have seen this, Shana. Shana, I'm performing with 2 other amazing poets. We're coming together, and it's called When Men Speak. And it's going to be phenomenal. So it's next Saturday. It's at the Port of Sanford Performing Arts on the 14th. And the 2 other poets that I'm performing with, Malcolm Jamar Warner, Theo from The Cosby Show, who's a poet and just won a Grammy. And the next poet is Coco Brown, who's a phenomenal poet. You might know his poem. Tom Joyner used to play him a lot, Sundress and all that. So we're doing a poetic. We have a couple of special guests coming in. But when you come, it's $50, right? But the beauty is you get to come in and have desserts.
Oh,
and the VIP tickets are all gone, so we don't have any
okay,
more of
okay.
those. But the regular tickets are still there. But you get an opportunity to come in and just really enjoy a fun evening of spoken word. And when I tell you, Malcolm, Jamal Warner, and Coco Brown are two phenomenal poets. I told
Wow.
they working me hard. I'm over here studying. I got all my little poems, relearning them and trying to, because you do not want to be the weak link on that program. And so next Saturday, the 14th of December at the Port of San Francisco. The doors open at 7.
Love
Show
it.
starts at 8. Joyce Hotel is hosting it.
Awesome.
It's been sponsored by a very good friend of mine and his organization, David Manuel. I'm a father, which makes sense because we're all fathers. So, and it's
Beautiful.
going to be talking about things and just the beauty of sisters and the women. So our poems edify women and our community and uplift men. And so this is going to be a very positive evening. And I'm so thankful to David Manuel and I'm a father and his whole organization for being the sponsor for this, because it's going to be an amazing and
Beautiful.
Joyce Hotel, I have to just give you this little. Joyce Hotel was one of the first people who gave me a platform as well back in the mid to late 90s. I was called by a good friend of mine named Priscilla White, and she said that she had a birthday celebration. So I went to her house for a party, and Joyce Hotel was there, and I did some poetry, and Joyce ended up bringing me on the Quiet Storm, and we started a part back in the 90s called A Poetic Moment. So every Thursday night you would hear Hank Stewart, and that was how my name became a little bit more household in the city of Atlanta, and it elevated. So, again, God has been all through my career. So again, there's no way I can look in the mirror and say I. It's so much of we. I tell people often, 98% of what you see is other people who poured in it, but about 2% of what you see is me. The other 98 is people who poured into me, who believed in me, who invested in me, who gave to me, who created, and it was not selfish. Very little of what you see is me.
Do you recognize the guy we're on with on Let's Talk America with host Shana Thornton? It's the one and only international award-winning poet, Hank Stewart. Hank, you mentioned money earlier. We have a pretty famed if you will, on-air host who talks about all things finances on with us. Chetney says, do you have a favorite poem or collection or you own or someone else's that you'd recommend to listeners? That's a great question.
So you can okay, so actually poetry was not my strength. I didn't like poetry. So it's really interesting. I told Malcolm, Jamal, and Coco, I said, I really don't like poetry. I said that's really what God put me in the middle. So I don't really recite. There's only 2 pieces of poetry that I recite that's not mine. One is a piece by Dr. Benjamin Mays entitled "A Minute," and a piece by Maria Evers, "I take my freedom lest I die, for pride runs through my veins, not blood, and principles support me, so that I will lift head, see liberty not sky, for I am he who dares to say I shall be free or dead today." Everything else I recite is my work. So if you go out to YouTube or if you Google Hank Stewart, there's a whole lot of work out there. I have 10 books of poetry, 6 CDs,
Wow.
2 novels, a coffee table book, and 1 children's book. So I have a lot of work. I have a lot of material. And so I recite. I don't have really a lot of time to recite other people's work because I'm still trying to get some of the pieces that I absolutely love committed to memory and out in the public. But there are pieces that I love. You can go out and see It, the poem It is one of my favorites. Chocolate, Why Would You Stop in the Middle of a Storm? You can Google that one. Another one, I got some strong pieces, historical pieces, 1619, Those Trees. I have wedding pieces. One of the things, Shana, that I tried hard not to be is a one-dimensional poet. So you have civil rights pieces, you have spiritual pieces, you have love pieces, you have pieces about domestic violence, sex trafficking, breast cancer. I tried to write about anything. My sister transitioned from breast cancer, so I had a walk that the Stewart Foundation that we put on. We raised about $100,000, ended up giving all of the funds in a couple of years to Sisters by Choice. So the pink ribbon walk that you see now, the Stewart Foundation started, and it was called the Walk Against the Call. So I try to make sure that my poetry reflects life. Right.
Yes.
And I was real fortunate that Congressman Hank Johnson, the 4th Congressional District, made me the poet laureate of his congressional district. So that's written in Congress.
Congratulations.
So I've had so many. So to answer her question, I want her to find her own favorite. Go to YouTube and just put Hank Stewart, and a whole bunch of things are going to come up out there.
Thank you for that feedback from Chutney out of Atlanta as well. We it's a busy show tonight as we have another on-air host, Terrell. We appreciate you on air as well. And he says, great discussion. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Sandra is saying there's an event coming up next weekend. I think you already spoke about it.
Yep, yeah,
Thank you,
exactly.
Sandra, for reminding us. Sadiqa out of Atlanta says, how do you manage your time and multiple projects? That's a great question,
That's
Hank,
a
because you
great
do a
question.
lot.
Yeah, and I'm really fortunate. I have an amazing team. So Gwen Mason and I started the Stewart Foundation, and we've been around for 19 years. So I hate to call names because then you forget somebody. But Gwen Mason she and I are the co-founders of the Stewart Foundation. We've done a lot of work. We've worked with over 30,000 students in the last 19 years. We're really impact not only in the city of Atlanta but around the world. We've had Kim Hodge. We've had students that we've worked with in Guyana, Belize, but all over the country. But we're based in Metro Atlanta. Then I've been really fortunate to have a young lady by the name of Maureen Stubbs, who's been my personal assistant for the last 20 something years, and Mixa Henry. And then we have an amazing staff for the Stewart Foundation. So I have, one of the things that I think made President Obama so successful was the fact not that he was so smart, but he put smart people around him. Okay. I'm not the smartest person in my group, Shana. It's the people around me who makes me look good, and I make sure I give them credit. I often say when we are on a program, if everything that went right, give them the credit. Anything that went wrong, blame me, because I'm probably the one who messed it up. But we have an amazing family in the Stewart Foundation. And so if you choose the right people, you can give them a task and let them own it, and they're going to take it and they're going to run with it. And so we've been fortunate to do that. So that's a great question, but it's the people that you have, the village that you have around you.
Thank you, Sadiqa. It's Real Talk for Real People, produced by Let's Talk America with host Shana Thornton. I'm your on-air host and executive producer, talking to award-winning poet Hank Stewart. Get your questions in as we begin to wrap up. Pamela out of Washington, D.C. says yes. So thank you, Pamela, for watching.
Pamela, I have an affinity for Washington. My sister lived in Bladensburg, Maryland. And so I was in D.C. I was actually in D.C. not too long ago. But Washington, if I wasn't in Atlanta, I think D.C. would have been a place I would have landed.
The great city. Thank you, Pam, for watching. Shana out of Atlanta Metro has a great question. We shout out to our YouTube viewers. Thank you, YouTube family. How do you go about choosing a mentor, Hank? Great question, Shoshana.
So you want to find somebody who's where you want to be. Right. That was, so when I looked around, I wish I could show you this room in here. This room has, you can see a picture behind me with Dr. C.T. Vivian, but it's got a lot of awards around here. And I didn't go after, I got an Emmy and Pro Max. I got all these, I have a lot of awards. I have awards 2 honorary doctoral degrees and all. I didn't shoot after any of that. I promise you, that was not my goal. But when I went to the people who mentored me, when I saw all of their awards, I said, they got to be doing something right. And so I chose people who were very active in the community, not just in business, but in the community, because I think Dr. King said it best. If you want to be important, wonderful. If you want to be great, wonderful. If you want to be recognized, wonderful. But recognize he or she who's greatest among you should be a servant. And the people that I chose as mentor were people who were serving, giving back to the community. And that, for me, was everything. So when you're searching for a mentor, look at the person who's where you want to be.
Okay.
And ask them to see if they can help you get to that level.
I love it. I love it. Great advice, Shoshana. Hopefully that helped. Edith out of Atlanta Metro said amen. I think she's confirming something you said about gifts. Sadiqa asked a great question. Those mentors are very heavy hitters, no doubt, very well known. How can we tap into that level of talent? Because Hank, I will say this, you mentioned a lot of people that are world famous. Most people don't feel they're in the same room to get access to them. Help us.
So those people are easy. When you find people who are truly about purpose and movement and community, they're not hard to connect with. But you can't go asking for something. You got to go and saying, how can I help them?
Okay.
So for me, it wasn't, I had to work those relationships up to being Dr. Lowry's mentor. Okay. But you get involved in the People's Agenda, an organization that he started, and you go in and you serve and you give, and they see your commitment. Right? They see your service, they see your work, and those people open their arms. I didn't go to any of these mentors asking them just to be my mentor. I wanted to know, how could I help them? Right? Yeah. How can I learn from them? Right? And so Tommy Dortch, before he transitioned, his last penning was me in the 100 Black Men, and Tommy gave me. So I'm gonna drop another attaboy that I had. I had an opportunity to perform in the New York Stock Exchange. I don't know how many poets have ever performed in there, but Tommy was being honored and was gonna ring the bell in the New York Stock Exchange. And he sent me a message. He said, "Look, I need you to come to New York because I'm having a reception on the front end, and I need you to perform." So that, that's a part of my resume, performing in the New York Stock Exchange. And so you choose people who are where you want to be, and you give to them. You go to them to help them move their agenda, especially if their agenda is community and service forward, and they'll recognize you. They'll recognize you.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. Cassandra says 100%. She's very giving thumbs up. Stacey said, awesome. Thanks for the information about that next performance next weekend. Lakeisha out of Atlanta, one of our educators, says, I remember listening to the poetic moment. Thank you, Lakeisha, for sharing that with us. Tiro says, it's great when you're inspired by successful people with integrity and everyday down-to-earth personalities. I like how he keeps God in his motion. Beautiful. That's a compliment to you, certainly, Hank. Edith asked a great question. She says, what brings you joy on your downtime? Because you seem to stay pretty busy.
I have a son. He'll be 30 years old a week from today. And my son, just the time that we spend together is phenomenal. I mean, we work out together. I work out every single day. Today is day 2,897 straight workout days. I haven't missed a day in it'll be 8 years on the 30th of this year. So I work out. I have a sauna. I have 2 saunas at my house that I get in. I have all my equipment here. So when I'm studying my poetry, I'm on my treadmill, my elliptical, my rowing machine, keeping my body healthy. Again, I told you I turned 61 in September.
Wow.
So being as healthy as I possibly can be is crucial. You can't be a leader if you're not healthy. Health, you want to make sure that your mind, your body, spiritually, and I think, it's believing in, I think it really is believing a positive mindset. I tell people this all the time. I say, people ask me, how you doing? I say, I'm amazing, right, Shana? And I said, I'm amazing so much that I believe it. And not only do I believe it, I expect it to be.
Yes.
How's your day going? It's amazing. And I expect my days to be amazing. I don't expect bad days. I can't tell you the last time I had a bad day. I had a bad day back in 19 something. I don't have bad days, right? Because I don't look, and God promised me good days. And so, so I think, we tell our young people all the time, you show me who your friends are and I'll show you who you are, right? If you can't change the crowd that you're in, then change the crowd that you're in. So if you hang around people who are positive, my pastor said, if a drunk hang out with a drunk, neither one of them will ever be sober. If you're hanging out with people who ain't going nowhere, it's not going to be long before you're going to have your brakes on. I try to hang out with winners, right? And if there are 5 people and 4 of them are millionaires and you're not, you're probably bound to be the 5th millionaire. But if you hanging out broke people, and 4 of them are broke out of the 5, you're the 5th person, you're probably going to be broke too. Hang out with people who are moving and doing what you want to do, right? And so for me, it's just, it's working out. It's, it's the spiritual piece. It's giving back. The only thing that's going to outlive me are children. Children are 20% of our population, but they're 100% of our future. So if you invest in that 20%, you have a future. So we believe in investing in young people and giving them as much as we possibly can. Those are the things that make me happy. So you're right. My downtime is doing the things that we do for, if you can get to the point where your career is your downtime, you've made it, right? And so that's where we are. My career is a part of my downtime. I mean, writing poetry is fun to me. It's not a task, right? I look forward to it,
But what's the old adage? If you find something you love, you never work a day in your
You'll never
life.
work a day in your life.
So true. We have money on trade from YouTube. Thank you for our YouTube family saying great live. We appreciate it. I get your last feedback, last comments in as we begin to wrap up. Hank, I've got to ask you 2 things before you get out of here. Okay. One from me as your on-air host, Shana Thornton, on Let's Talk America on this Wednesday night. You mentioned helping males, right? And in particular, males of color. I've got to ask this. There's so many dynamics to being boy or girl in this world. We both know that. But there is a call out by so many people, mothers and fathers, asking for guidance for their male children. And I've got to ask you this, so many times we turn to sports, and I'm a sports fanatic, I get it. But what I love about watching you and your life journey, you're a poet, right? It's something creative, it's something that's different, and you're very disciplined. You sound very athletic because you're working out every day. You even remember the day that you're working out thousands of days. That's super impressive. But how can a father right now who's watching us from Orangeburg, South Carolina, who's trying to reach his son, perhaps saying, maybe there's another avenue I can take? I've heard interviews with Denzel Washington saying that, you know, he there were a lot of people he was around growing up that ended up in the prison system. And he talks really about, I don't want to paraphrase him too much, but drama and acting and theater saved him. Talk about the creative line of work that you're in, being something different from sports. And I'm not knocking sports. There's a lot of discipline and fundamentals that come from it. But talk to us about the parents who don't think the sports is reaching their child, but maybe something like creative poetry could.
So I think you meet your child where they are, right? So let's say you got a child who likes to eat, and you want to teach him how to cook, right? So a good friend of mine, G. Garvin, is one of the most recognizable people in a celebrity chef. You know how much money he makes as a chef, and his TV chef G. Garvin is all over the world, right? So you find out what that child is good at, and you find and create platforms that works for them. You know, you're absolutely right. I said, you know, part of our problem is we're always, you know, we're quick to usher our kids into sports and music, right? And it's not like you say, I'm not knocking it, but give them some other options too. You know, take them, you know, to other things, to the museum. And you know, I got another friend, Tom, who's another mentor of mine, Raymond Cody, makes great money. Who's an artist? He's a painter. His stuff is on display. The people who built one of the builders, I can't remember the builder's name. Okay. Used to use Raymond Cody's work in his model homes to sell the homes. Wow. So they were renting his art, paying him, I think it's like $5,000 a week for his art. And then when the model home sold, he got his art back. So there's so many creative things that we can do. The problem is we keep boxing our children in. We haven't made education and some other things sexy. The things that we made sexy is music and sports, right? Most time you don't find other kids and other nationalities who you know. I'm always excited to talk to friends of mine who are doctors and accounting. You know, I got friends who are making great money. They have their own accounting firms, right? They love numbers, and and their clients depend on them. I got one, Shaquille O'Neal's his client, and Shaquille is worth $400 million, right? So, you know, there's so many things. Matter of fact, you can tell them you might not make it on the field as a professional athlete, but if you're the doctor, you're gonna have a longer career. You know, because the doctor for the Falcons or the Hawks or whatever, you know, they ain't got to worry about their knees hurting, 10 years from now, right? Yeah. And they getting paid really nicely. So I think meeting their children where they are and spending quality time with your child. Most of our kids want to spend time with us. And if you don't, you're going to see them in the alternative. I spoke at every youth detention center in the state of Georgia twice. As a matter of fact, the Department of Juvenile Justice is calling me to start back again in January. And where I go out and I speak in all these youth detention centers. And so I often say, if you don't spend that quality time now, and that's early, who's it said it's easy to build a boy than to mend a man. If you can build a boy you can build a boy the right way. If he see the way he's gonna love his mom. If he see the daddy loving his mom, if he see the dad getting up going to work, he gonna understand what responsibility is like. If he see the dad, if the family takes family vacation, that's gonna teach him what family. You are your child's first example.
That's right.
I did not learn how to pray at church. I learned how to pray at home because I saw my mama praying at home all the time. Yeah. I didn't learn my ABCs at school. My mama taught me my ABCs at school. And she said, and when my aunties came over, say your ABCs. And I'd be A, B, C, D, D, E, F, messing up. But she put me on platforms, right, to do that. So I often say, the first teachers are not the teachers somewhere. It's the home. It's in that family. Right. So if you're in Orangeburg, South Carolina, you are your child, and your child. Let me say this, and we can move on real quick. But you know, your child is really impressed with small things.
Yeah.
What you think is small, it's huge to them. There was this commercial where they were trying to get people to become mentors and big brothers. And so this guy said, he decided he's going to be a mentor for this kid. And so he said, I'm going to take them and we're going to go and see shoot some fireworks. And so he went and he messed it up. He said, man, I messed these fireworks. And the kid was like, oh man, my mentor was so good. He shot fireworks better than anybody I've ever seen him before. He thought he messed up, but the kid was looking up at him and he was impressed, right? So what you sometimes think is a failure or a fault, they think is an asset and a positive. So don't underestimate how much you can invest. Women, the way you dress, the way you look, the way you carry yourself, there's a little girl looking at you right now.
That's right.
On how you walk and how you dress and how you look. Right. And so we changed the game, not by what we said, but by the way we walked.
Yeah, I love it. And I think that's why it's so key to have diversity among what our children see, boys and girls. But you're right. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the athlete. I'm not knocking that. But see the award-winning poet who is educating us about literature in the world, to show us the physician or the accountant or the social worker or the therapist, because there's power in the exposure. Speaking of that, Sadiqa says, yes, exposure is key. But Nasha, speaking of social workers out of Atlanta Metro, says, come on now, beacon of light. She loves that. Such a great point. We are going to wrap up now, Hank. Such a pleasure to have you, friend, back on the show. But before we do, I'm going to put you on the spot. Okay. This was not planned, anyone. We love your work. We love your passion. We would love for you to do a piece for us right now. Any poem, anyone you want to retrieve, because your memory is so impeccable. It's crazy. But right now, if you would help us close us out. For everybody that was watching, we appreciate you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to put the spontaneous spotlight on the one and only award-winning international poet, Hank Stewart.
So the piece that I would do, I had an opportunity. I was in South Africa last year, and South Africa was going through a major election like we were. And I had the opportunity to be over in Cape Town, Joburg, and we were motivating the young people. And I spoke, I think, about 15 times in 10 days. And every time I closed, I would say, it's our time. It's our turn. If we don't do our part, it's our fault. It's our time, it's our turn, and if we don't do our part, it's our fault. And so the poem that I would always close with was a piece that's called I Accept. And it's a piece that I wrote the very day that Congressman John Lewis and Dr. C.T. Vivian died. They died on the exact same day. One passed in the morning, other passed in the evening. And so I felt, because they were mentors, that at that point I needed to pick up the baton and move forward. So this poem is entitled I Accept. What are you giving me? What are you putting in my hand? What you're giving me has just altered. It has changed my plans. Why are you looking at me like that? There is this look in your eyes. Am I even qualified to accept this? Will there be a ceremony? Do I need cap and gown? Need I be baptized? I know you're tired. I know you deserve rest. How can I say no with all that you've poured into me, all that you've invested? I'll take it. Okay, I take the baton, I carry the torch. You've earned the right to relax, the right to sit on the porch. I accept the baton and all the responsibilities that it holds. I accept the challenge to stand tall and bold, to fight for justice, to stay on the wall. I'll do what needs to be done. Yes, Shana, I accept the call. And integrity will stand with me, even if with a stand alone, to speak truth, no matter who's wrong. You fought the good fight. You completed your assignment. Pass me the baton. Our souls are in alignment. I'll sacrifice my body just like you. I'll stand or kneel against racism, sexism, discrimination, regardless of the hue. I'll get up early and I'll stay up late. And when it's my time to be tested, just like you, I won't take the bait. I accept the baton because it's my turn. I accept all of our ancestors who were raped, beaten, those who were burned. I accept because before midnight, December the 31st, 1862, our ancestors, they were praying to God on their knees. I accept all of our ancestors who were hung from those trees. I accept because dogs and water holes didn't turn you around. I accept because our ancestors spoke up and spoke out, even when they didn't know the language. They didn't know a person, place, or a thing was a noun. I accept because at the bottom of the bridge, you were beaten and left for dead, broken bones, tear gas, blood dripping down your head. I accept because you sat, because you had tired feet. I accept because the only way we could walk into that hotel was through the back door. And it was only to wash dishes, cook on the bed, change the sheets. I accept because America was built on the land that our ancestors tore. I stand because our ancestors' blood fertilized these soils. So if it rains, I stand. If it's hot, no fan, I stand with the weight on my shoulders. But the foundation that I stand on makes me bolder. I stand for those who didn't get a chance. I stand for those who died because a white woman said at me he took a glance. I even stand for those who look like me but may have forgotten, although our ancestors were side by side in the fields picking cotton. I stand for seniors. I stand for children. I fight for one. I advocate for millions. I stand for those ancestors whose dreams of freedom they would hold fast. I stand for so many of our ancestors who died for this country, and the flag was never flown for them and half staff or half mast. I stand for those living under bridges and sleeping on makeshift pallets. I stand because our ancestors knew our voice was in the census, it was in our voice, it was in the booth, it was on the ballot. So yea, though I walk through the valleys and the shadows of death, it's about others now, no longer about self. Give me a baton I carry with pride. I'm going to let the torch burn out, the baton hit the ground, even when I'm tired. You trained me. Now I'm one of your lieutenants. I take the baton from my ancestors so one day I can pass it to our descendants. I accept. Do you? So remember, it's our time, it's our turn. If we don't do our part, it's our fault. And Shana, if you never come face to face with the devil, you and him must be heading in the same direction.
A virtual clap, virtual clap. Thank you so
Thank you
much,
for
Hank.
having me.
I want to close out. Edith out of Atlanta says, what an amazing show, host and guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you
She
very
said,
much.
always motivated to be better after watching the podcast. She gave us hearts and kisses. We appreciate you, Edith. Stacy said, I truly enjoyed this. Thank you. Cassandra is giving thumbs up all over the place. Thank you out of Atlanta as well. Jada out of Columbia, the Metro South Kakalaki, says, amazing poet. Thank you. I'm going to say thank you on behalf of Hank. I'm sure he thanks you as well. And Edith gives us virtual claps all over the place. Hank, it has been a pleasure. It's been over a decade, my friend, but we picked up right where we stopped off. And so we're going to have you back on. So much more to talk with you about life itself and the journey. But I will tell you this proudly. Congratulations. Keep it going. Keep shining. Keep being a part of the solution for all of us, but especially our youth needing that positive role model. We have Banasha. She is thanking us. She did the spoken word snap. Thank you, Banasha out of Atlanta. And Jeanette out of Atlanta also said, very powerful. We certainly appreciate you. And she's a jazz musician there too with us, Hank. So just keep that in mind. Also, art to art creativity. And also Miss Banasha, a beautiful voice. She's a very talented vocalist as well. So we love our listeners and viewers. You all make this show possible. Our exclusive guests, which are the best of the best, Hank Stewart. We're going to keep it going, keep the motivation going. 2025 will be here. Hank, have a phenomenal holiday season.
Thank you.
We're going to talk with you in 2025. Okay, my friend?
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Stay with us. Stay tuned to Let's Talk America with host Shana Thornton, because we offer real talk for real people. And that's you. And we're going to close out with the virtual snap, as Banasha said. And Pamela out of DC said, wonderful and thank you. Thank you, Hank. Keep it going. Thanks, everyone. Stay tuned. And tag someone now or in the replay, especially our youth, to let them know that exposure is key. And we've got an award-winning poet, Hank Stewart, on Let's Talk America. Take care, everyone.